Nobody can stop me now. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 158 of the Shower Podcast, the podcast where I'm temporarily in Thailand and you do you. I'm your host, Chip, and today, in our 7th episode of our mini-series, it's time for one of the most inspiring chapters in the history of self-improvement. It's the world after World War II, and everyone wanted a second chance. Before we start, as usual, if you end up liking this episode and overall like the Shower Podcast, leaving a like and a subscribe really help a lot. They're just one click, but they really make the difference. The war is over. Economies are booming. There are new houses, new cars, new jobs, but also new questions. People aren't just thinking about survival or structure anymore. They're thinking about identity, fulfillment, and meaning. And out of the questioning comes something bold. The idea that you're not here just to be good or to get by. You're here to become your fullest self. That's the heartbeat of what we now call the human potential movement. Let's pick up where we left off, with Abraham Maslow. By the 1950s, his ideas about self-actualizations are taking root beyond psychology circles. It's not just a theory, it's becoming a lifestyle. Maslow argued that people who self-actualize aren't necessarily rich or famous. They're authentic, creative, compassionate, and deeply aware of their place in the world. They live from the inside out. His research included studying people like Albert Einstein, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Frederick Douglass. And what did they all have in common? A sense of a mission, a lack of pretense, a drive to grow, not for approval, but for purpose. This laid the groundwork for something huge. In the 1960s, Maslow's ideas joined forces with the counterculture energy. And suddenly, personal growth wasn't just a private thing, it was a movement. Welcome to SLN. Tucked into the cliffs of Big Sur, California, the SLN Institute became the spiritual and psychological hub of the human potential movement. Think yoga, bodywork, meditation, encounter groups, psychedelics, and a lot of what does it mean to be whole? This was where thinkers, therapists, artists, and spiritual seekers gathered to explore consciousness and push boundaries. One of SLN's co-founders, Michael Murphy, believed that each of us has potential for extraordinary living. That was the mission, unlocking latent power, physically, emotionally, and creatively. People weren't just trying to heal, they were trying to transform. Now, yes, some of these veered into weird, the wild, and occasionally the unscientific. But beneath the tie-dye and barefoot dancing, there was a real insight that human beings have immense untapped capacity, and that capacity isn't just physical, it's emotional, relational, and spiritual. At the same time, more structured voices were entering the mix. Carl Rogers, who we mentioned last episode, was developing client-centered therapy based on the radical idea that you are the expert on yourself. The therapist's job? To listen, to believe in you, to create space for your truth to emerge. Rogers wrote, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." That's the whole game, right? That change doesn't happen when we fight ourselves. It happens when we learn to see ourselves clearly. And that takes us to a deeper truth about this era. While the mainstream was chasing success and conformity, millions were quietly or loudly asking deeper questions. Why do I feel empty even when life looks good on paper? Why does success feel hollow if it doesn't align with who I am? Is there more to life than working, consuming, and retiring? These questions weren't abstract. They were being asked in therapy sessions, in consciousness workshops, at protests, at dinner tables. Because alongside all of this growth, there was also pain. This was the era of many civil rights movements. The feminist wave, the LGBT liberation movement. People were fighting to be seen as full, worthy human beings, not just socially, but existentially. Leaders like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Betty Friedan weren't just political figures. They were guiding people toward a radical kind of self-respect. A sense that who you are, your voice, your truth, your history, matters. And standing in that truth, that's self-actualization too. So far, we've seen the 1950s and 60s ignite a movement, a belief that personal growth isn't a luxury, or even just a goal. It's the purpose, to become real, whole, free. Now, let's see how these ideas kept on evolving. Let's start with a phrase you've definitely heard, be here now. That wasn't a slogan on a thought bag. It was the title of a book by Ram Dass, a Harvard psychologist who traveled to India, met a guru, and came back with a mission to bridge Western psychology and Eastern spirituality. His message, that growth isn't just about self-analysis, it's about presence, acceptance, and service. Ram Dass was part of a broader wave of thinkers, Alan Watts, Thich Nhat Hanh, and later Jon Kabat-Zinn, who brought concepts like mindfulness, non-attachment, and meditation into Western discourse. Suddenly, the mind wasn't just something to fix. It was something to observe, care for, and even transcend. This marked a major shift. Growth moved from being mostly cognitive, something you thought through, to something embodied and holistic. And while that was happening, activism and inner work started to merge. Think of bell hooks, the feminist author and scholar who said that love, real radical love, is a practice, a political act, and a personal responsibility. She wrote, "Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion." And that's what we see throughout this era. The understanding that personal healing and collective liberation are deeply linked. You can't work on yourself without looking at the world. And you can't change the world without working on yourself. By the late 60s and into the 70s, the human potential movement had branched into every direction. Psychology, leadership, creativity, therapy, education, and spirituality. We saw the emergence of Gestalt therapy, which emphasized awareness and the present moment, bioenergetics, releasing emotions stored in the body, and the early foundation of life coaching. Even corporations got in. Seminars, retreats, and team-building exercises were all borrowed from this wave of emotional, psychological, and interpersonal growth. But, of course, there were pitfalls. The line between authenticity and narcissism blurred. Growth sometimes became a product to sell. Not everything was grounded in science. And not everyone had access to these ideas. Self-actualization still required time, resources, and safety. It wasn't evenly distributed. Yet, despite its flaws, the movement left a legacy that we're still living in. So many of the ideas we take for granted now, emotional intelligence, journaling, mindfulness, therapy, authenticity, they were nurtured in this era. They gave us permissions to ask, what if there's more to life than just performing? And maybe that's the most radical thing about this period. It said, you don't have to be a monk or a genius to grow. You just have to be willing to look inward and keep looking, even when it's uncomfortable. It wasn't about perfection. It was about becoming whole. So, as we close this episode, here's a reflection. Are you growing toward an image or toward your truth? Are you improving to fit in or to show up more fully, exactly as you are? That's the legacy of the 60s and 70s. A reminder that you don't have to become someone else. You have to become yourself with courage. In the next episode, we'll enter the age of productivity, peak performance, and the modern self-help industry, where personal growth got systemized, monetized, and, yes, optimized. But we'll also look at how the original spark survived, even in the age of checklists and hustle culture. So, as always, thank you very much for listening until the end. I have to say that I really end up enjoying this series, and maybe another one will be coming in the future before the end of our 365 episodes. 3 episodes to go, and if you ended up liking this episode, leaving a like and a subscribe really help, as always. And until the next one, stay consistent, stay resilient, and see you tomorrow.